You wake up next to someone who knows your favorite coffee order, your childhood fears, and the name of your first pet. They've seen your worst moments. They've held your hand through loss. They know how you like your eggs. And yet, they haven't touched you in months. Not out of anger, not even out of neglect. It just slipped away. You still talk. You laugh. You raise children. You share a bank account. You plan vacations. From the outside, everything looks fine. But in the quiet hours, under the shared roof of a love once burning, a question begins to whisper. Are we still in love, or just good friends playing house? Sexless relationships are not rare. In fact, far more common than people think. They just live in silence, behind curtains drawn shut. We tend to associate love with passion, the quickened heartbeat, the magnetic pull, the irresistible desire. But what happens when the body no longer follows where the heart used to go? Can love persist without sex? Or does its absence quietly erode what once held us together? The Greek philosopher Epicurus once said, "It is not so much our friends' help that helps us, as the confidence of their help. But what if we live with a friend whose body no longer desires ours? What if the help is there, but the intimacy is gone?" We are told that true love is about companionship, trust, shared values. And that's true, to a point. But we forget that the body is not an afterthought in love. It's a language, one that speaks without words. When sex disappears, we don't just lose pleasure. We lose touch, literally and metaphorically. We lose the subtle affirmations that say, "I see you, I want you, I still choose you." But here's where it gets more complicated. Many couples stay together without sex, some by choice, others by quiet resignation. And they'll say, "We still love each other, we're just not physical anymore." Is that still love? Well, it depends on what kind of love we're talking about. Philosopher Erich Fromm, in The Art of Loving, wrote, "Mature love says, 'I need you because I love you.' Immature love says, 'I love you because I need you.'" Sexless relationships often drift into a quiet, mature love, the kind that doesn't demand or possess, but accompanies. It's warm, comfortable, gentle, but it can also become dull. When we lose sex, we risk losing not only a form of pleasure, but a form of renewal. Sex, when intimate and consensual, reconnects. It reminds us we're more than roommates. It renews the pulse beneath the daily routine. Without it, the relationship can begin to feel like a story that has stopped surprising us. So, when a couple stops having sex, the question isn't just why, but what does it mean? Does it mean love has transformed into something more stable, more platonic, more dependable? Or does it mean love is quietly dissolving while both partners pretend not to notice? Here's a painful truth. Most couples don't talk about it. They feel the absence, but naming it feels dangerous, like it might open a wound too deep to heal. So instead, they compensate. One partner dives into work. The other invests in the kids. They become functional, even successful, but emotionally malnourished. And slowly, a quiet grief sets in. A grief for something that is no longer spoken of, but is deeply felt. The philosopher Simone de Beauvoir once said, "Few tasks are more like the torture of Sisyphus than housework. With its endless repetition, the clean becomes soiled. The soiled is made clean, over and over, day after day." Replace housework with sexless relationships, and the metaphor still stands. Couples go through the motions of life. The dishes get done, the laundry folded, but something essential remains untouched. And so, the emotional rhythm starts to decay. And yet, some couples endure, even thrive, without sex. How? They redefine intimacy. They hold hands during long walks. They kiss with intention. They write notes. They share dreams. They ask questions. They stay curious about each other. For these couples, love becomes less about fire and more about embers, steady, glowing, enduring. Love doesn't always vanish without sex, but it does demand reinvention. If you're in a sexless relationship, the real question isn't, is this still love? It's, what kind of love is this now? And, are we both okay with that? Because staying together without asking those questions is not romance. It's inertia. And inertia is not the same as love. As the poet Rainer Maria Rilke wrote, "The point of marriage is not to create a quick commonality by tearing down all boundaries. On the contrary, a good marriage is one in which each partner appoints the other to be the guardian of his solitude. But even solitude needs to be held, touched, desired, not every day, not every week, but with presence, with care. So the silence around sexlessness, the lack of conversation, of vulnerability, of honesty, becomes the true threat. Sexless relationships don't fail because of the missing act. They fail because the absence becomes unspeakable. When we stop touching, we don't just stop touching the body, we stop touching the soul. What happens when the thing you never thought you'd lose just disappears? Not in a burst of anger, not in the aftermath of betrayal, but slowly, like breath fading on a cold mirror. The passion you once shared becomes something you talk about in the past tense. You might joke about it, you might ignore it, or maybe you pretend it was never that important. But at night, alone, back turned, space between you wide and unspoken, the ache returns. You didn't fall out of love, not exactly. You just stopped reaching, stopped exploring, stopped asking, stopped desiring, and that's where the real mystery begins. Is love still love without longing? The 13th century mystic Rumi once wrote, "The minute I heard my first love story, I started looking for you, not knowing how blind that was." Lovers don't finally meet somewhere. They're in each other all along. But even Rumi, in his infinite romanticism, was consumed by longing. Desire wasn't a weakness. It was the doorway to the divine. So, what do we lose when desire vanishes? We lose wonder. We lose the sacred space between two people who choose to keep discovering each other again and again. Without that spark, without the heat of attraction, love begins to feel like maintenance. We stay for comfort, not discovery, for stability, not intimacy. Some say, but isn't that what long-term love becomes? A partnership? A bond that doesn't need sex to survive? And yes, some couples truly do evolve into that. But that evolution must be mutual, conscious, talked through, agreed upon. When one partner longs for touch, while the other turns away, silence becomes poison. You may still share a life, but you stop sharing a world. There's a word the philosopher Martin Buber used, I-thou. It describes the sacred relationship between two beings who see each other fully, not as objects, not as roles, but as whole, dynamic souls. When sex disappears, we often shift into what Buber called an I-it relationship. You become a function, a role, spouse, parent, provider, planner. And when that happens, we stop truly seeing each other. We see habits, we see expectations, we see laundry and bills and dinner plans, but not the mystery of the other person. Sex, at its best, is not just physical. It's a way of saying, I still see you as someone I want. I still choose you. Without it, love can become less a dance and more a duty. You might wonder, how did we get here? Often, it's not a sudden shift. It's slow erosion. Sleep schedules change, stress builds, kids arrive, hormones shift, resentments grow, bodies age, desires quiet down, and no one says anything. You stop kissing goodnight. You stop reaching across the sheets. You stop initiating because you're tired of being rejected. And then, it's been months, or years. And now, the distance feels permanent, like crossing it would break something. But here's what most people don't realize. The absence of sex is rarely just about sex. It's about unspoken disappointment, about unresolved conflict, about emotional disconnection, buried under routine. The philosopher Alain de Botton once wrote, "Love is a skill, not just an enthusiasm. And intimacy, physical intimacy, is part of that skill. It's not about performance, or frequency, or technique. It's about attention, presence, vulnerability. It's about saying, here I am, still here, still choosing you, not because I have to, but because I want to." Some couples, when faced with sexlessness, reach for solutions. They read books, go to therapy, rekindle curiosity, rediscover each other, and sometimes that brings them back to the fire. But others find something else, a truth that's harder to face. They've grown apart, emotionally, spiritually, or sexually, and no longer fit as lovers, only as companions, co-parents, business partners. And so, they must decide, is this version of love enough for me? Can I mourn the passion and still stay? Or am I pretending while quietly grieving a desire I still need? Philosophy asks us to be courageous, to sit with hard questions. And this is one of them. What do I want from love? Not what you were told, not what the movies say, not what your friends are doing, but you. What do you long for? Physical intimacy, emotional safety, intellectual companionship, all of it? Because if your partner can no longer meet you there, not out of cruelty, but truth, then you must face a deeper question. Do I love them enough to stay in this new form of love? Or do I love myself enough to seek something more complete? And here's the final paradox. Sometimes we stay in sexless relationships, not because of love, but because of fear. Fear of starting over, fear of hurting them, fear of the unknown, fear of being alone, fear of never finding desire again. But fear is not a foundation for love. It is, at best, a shadow we must learn to walk through. So if you find yourself in this quiet desert, emotionally close, physically abandoned, don't ask whether it's still love. Ask instead, is it still my kind of love? And can I live with that answer? There's a kind of grief that doesn't announce itself. It doesn't come with funerals or tears. It comes in quiet moments, in the pause before a kiss that never happens, in the hand that doesn't reach back. You're still together. You still talk. You still plan vacations, argue over groceries, laugh at shows you both love, but deep inside, something essential has been buried. The fire, the ache, the unspoken pull that says you're mine and I want you. And the hardest part? You might not even know when it died. So why does it matter? If you love each other, if you're loyal, supportive, emotionally close, why should sex matter? Because intimacy is not just a luxury, it's a language. And when we stop speaking it, something in us goes unheard. The philosopher Simone de Beauvoir once wrote, "One is not born, but rather becomes a woman." We can apply this idea to relationships too. You are not born lovers. You become them, again and again, through effort, vulnerability, and touch. When the becoming stops, the love doesn't always disappear, but it stops growing, and anything that doesn't grow eventually hardens. There's a myth in modern relationships that once love is established, it will sustain itself. But that's not love. That's memory. Love, real, alive love, is an act of daily attention. And yes, sex changes. It softens, slows down, becomes more about presence than passion. But when it disappears entirely, especially without agreement, something crucial goes missing. Not just orgasms, but the sense that you are still seen, still desired, still chosen. Let's not pretend this is only about bodies. It's about souls. Sex is where we let ourselves be awkward, silly, raw, exposed. It's where we surrender control, even for a moment, and let someone else hold our truth. When that stops, we often start to guard ourselves in other areas too. We withhold emotions. We dodge hard conversations. We stop risking vulnerability. And soon, the relationship becomes a negotiation of needs, not a celebration of connection. But here's where things get even more complex. What if you love them deeply and still long for something more? What if the sexless life they're content with leaves you starving? Does that make you selfish, unfaithful, broken? No, it makes you human. The philosopher Arthur Schopenhauer said, "Compassion is the basis of morality." But compassion isn't just about giving, it's also about honesty with others and with yourself. To be truly compassionate in a sexless relationship, you must first acknowledge your own pain, and then, gently, bravely, speak it. Here's the truth no one likes to say aloud. You can love someone and still not be compatible. You can respect them, laugh with them, raise children with them, and still crave a connection they can no longer, or never could, give you. And that's not a betrayal. That's reality. But what is betrayal? Is silence, staying, pretending, shrinking your needs until resentment builds like rust on the soul. That is the slowest form of heartbreak, and ironically, the most preventable. So what do? You talk, not to blame, not to shame, but to reveal. You say, "I miss us. I miss touching you, being touched. I miss feeling like lovers, not just roommates. Is that still possible for us?" And then you listen, really listen, not to their guilt, not to their defenses, but to the truth they carry, the one they might be afraid to speak. Maybe they've lost attraction. Maybe they're ashamed of their body. Maybe they feel unappreciated. Maybe they're tired, or traumatized, or number. Sexlessness is rarely simple. It's rarely about you, but without dialogue, you'll never know. And if, after all the honesty and effort, the passion cannot return, then you face a sacred question. What do I owe myself? Is it nobler to stay, to honor the companionship, the history, the love that still breathes? Or is it braver to go, to admit that what you need, what you long for, no longer lives here? Only you can answer that. No philosopher, no therapist, No well-meaning friend can do it for you. But remember this: desire is not shallow. It is not childish. It is not shameful. It is part of your vitality, your truth, and in the right relationship, it doesn't disappear. It evolves, deepens, stretches across years, maybe not with the same fire, but with a steady glow that still warms you. In the end, the question is not whether love can survive without sex. It's whether you can, and whether the love that remains is enough to sustain you. Love, like life, is not measured by what it once was, but by what it still is. And sometimes, choosing yourself is not a rejection of love, it is the highest form of it.